Hi, this is John Pettigrew, and you're listening to Talking Through My Hat, a podcast that explores bookish businesses, the fantastic people who create them, and what those people have learned. I'm a hat wearer, a recovering editor, and the creator of Future Proofs, enabling editors and authors to work better online. To find out more, visit wearefutureproofs.com or follow me on Twitter at John_Pettigrew. Welcome to this episode of Talking Through My Hat. Today I'm talking with John Espirian, who describes himself as a relentlessly helpful copywriter. He writes in-depth business-to-business web content to help clients explain how their products, services and processes work. I've known John for a few years through the Society for Editors and Proofreaders, but he's also very active on LinkedIn and Twitter, and he's not just helpful to clients. He's also a constant source of great advice on topics ranging from using software effectively to social media practices to writing clearly. So welcome to Talking Through My Hat, John.
Thank you very much, John, for having me.
Yeah. So I've given you a brief introduction for our listeners, but how do you describe your business and what you do?
Yeah, so I sell myself as a technical copywriter, which means that I explain how products and services and processes work. Mm-hmm. So it amounts to writing simple content that is geared for the ideal reader. No. And the two main reasons that people come to me is because they haven't got time to write their own content for their website, yep. Or they're just too close to their own business to be able to explain it in an objective way.
Yeah.
And technical copywriting really is about explaining things in a neutral, objective fashion. Mm-hmm. So it's ideally geared for how something works, the how-to guide, the processes, HR kind of information. It's very neutral rather than salesy. Yeah. So that's the main service that I'm offering. And I've been doing that now since I went freelance in 2009. So almost 10 years.
Yeah. And you've come to the world of editing and writing in a slightly unusual way, perhaps. I've talked to several folk on the podcast here who started in publishing and have learned technology later on. You kind of gone the other way around, haven't you? You started out as a techie person. So how did you come to make that change from tech to writing about it, or writing about stuff?
I started out thinking that I was going to be a mathematician. It was the only thing I was really, really good at school. And then I studied maths and computer science at university, thinking that I'd do something in IT. Mm-hmm. I ended up working for an internet service provider and was testing software and hardware and looking at user guides and what does this button do and how does that work? And thinking, well, that's not right. This isn't very clear. You could have written that better.
Yeah.
And ended up being the guy who had the queue at his desk, where, John, how does this work? And I would explain things to them. And as time went on, I ended up becoming a quality assurance manager. So I had to listen to phone calls, had to read emails, had to look at user guides and make sure that things were clear.
Yeah.
And pick people up when they made mistakes in dealing with customers. And that led to me developing an editorial eye. And so when I eventually left the business and set up for myself, I used those skills to train myself to become an editor and a proofreader.
Yeah.
But my real skill was just taking a blank page and explaining things from scratch.
Yeah.
And so that's the way my business has developed is writing that kind of explanatory content.
Yeah. So see, one of the crucial steps for all of us is that step from, I'm employed by somebody to I'm running a business myself. Why did you make that change to running your own business? Was it kind of an accident? It seems to be quite an accident for quite a few of us. Or was there a kind of an intentional plan around that?
Yeah, I think the redundancy probably played a big part in the decision.
Yeah, that was why I went freelance the first time as well.
Yeah, but I mean, had I not been pushed in that way, I probably would have eventually gone freelance because there's just a limit to what you can earn when you're working for someone else's success. And I did want to take my business in its own direction. So I probably would have done it in a couple of years if I hadn't been pushed. But yes, in the end, it was a redundancy that made my mind up.
It's quite nice when those moments come along sometimes. It's not necessarily pleasant at the time, but you think, actually, that's fine. Yeah. I'm going to take that little redundancy package and go, I can do the thing I want to do.
Yeah, I used the time to get a bit of training as well, which I hadn't had for a little while. And then I used some contacts from the corporate world to be my first customers.
Yeah.
that got me going. That really helped in the first 6 to 12 months.
It's that first seed customers, aren't they, that you need to milk the network to get.
They were very important. And then after that, I just focused on building my web presence, because I knew that, Google was already a very, very popular thing 10 years ago, but even more so now. So I just focused on having a web presence that I knew, people would find me and want to employ me for technical copywriting work. So that's what I did.
Yeah, because you've really embraced this idea of what we now call content marketing. So writing blog articles, posting to LinkedIn and Twitter, and generally kind of being a person who says stuff online. Is that partly because you're a writer and you can't help it? Or is there something kind of intentional, something planned about this is a good way to promote what I do?
Well, yeah, I mean, the key service is explaining how stuff works, if you really boil it down.
Yeah.
So if I can demonstrate that through writing helpful content, then it makes perfect sense. So if I can show you, for example, how, I don't know, Dropbox works, or how some feature of Google works, you can make that kind of translation to, well, he could explain how our widget works, whatever it is, or our process. So it kind of came from that. And I've always just been interested in the general idea of marketing, and providing helpful content means that you stay top of mind with people, and they might not be ready to buy now, but in 6 months, a year, 2 years, they might be. That's what I'm trying to build into all of my content, is to have that kind of relentlessly helpful approach.
That's the thing, isn't it? You've got to understand not just hear the question they ask, which is a big enough task for a lot of people in the first place, but where they're coming from about it, and not to make assumptions, because so many technical help articles online go, oh, well, you just do this, this, and this, and then type this massive string at the command line or something. You think, no, step back.
It's all about understanding the reader, isn't it? And also, one of my favorite quotes is that nobody will ever complain that something is too simple to understand. So the easier you can make it for your content to be understood, the better. And some people will say, well, that's just dumbing down. Not really. If the content is clear and serves the reader's intent, which is, I need to find an answer quickly, or I'm really struggling with this and I need something more in depth that will show me step by step how it works. If you can do that, you'll be the person of choice. You'll be the person they go to next time.
That's it. I mean, so if a task is simple and someone can't work out how to do it, they need a simple explanation. And if the task is complex, then they need a simple explanation even more.
Yeah, that's right. That's the whole approach. So I don't
like that. You can't be too simple. It's
that's it. That comes from Ann Handley's book, Everybody Writes, which is full of really, really good copywriting knowledge, and it does work. This is the approach I've taken for 10 years, and it's worked very, very well for me. And another thing that I keep in mind is that Google is in business because it provides better answers than any other system that's out there. So you can be your own Google. You can be the person providing the best answers in whatever space it is you work. If you make shoes, or if you're a carpenter or whatever, you can provide the best answers to people's real questions. You'll be the voice of authority in your field. And that takes a while to get to that point, of course. No one's going to trust you after 5 minutes. But if you can do that over a consistent period, 18 months, 2 years usually, and then you will stand out. And that's the approach I'm trying to go for.
So is that what's behind all that social media activity for you? Kind of that LinkedIn, the Twitter, as well as the blog's obviously been going on for quite a while. But I know the last couple of years, LinkedIn's been quite a focus for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, LinkedIn's been really big. Since Microsoft took over LinkedIn at the end of 2016, start of 2017, things changed a lot on LinkedIn. It became much more of a social network than ever it was before. For a long time, it was seen as a place where you would have your online CV, but it really is a lot more than that now. It's a way of building a community, building a personal brand, and doing targeted searches to find people who would be interested in becoming your customers. So for me, I've put a lot of effort into building a presence on LinkedIn, and I think that's worked pretty well. In the last year, I think my stats have gone up something like tenfold, if not more. And that's quite significant because it means that more customers are coming to me, my network is growing, and as a result, my profits have gone up by almost half in the last year because of that. So
that's the ultimate metric for business, isn't it?
That's the thing. It makes a big difference.
Yeah.
I mean, having said that, as you mentioned, the blog has been going a little bit longer. I only really started writing regularly since about the end of 2015. The blog was a bit older than that, but in terms of regular content production, it's been since 2015. So we're only talking about 3 years or so. And when I look at my stats, more than half of the people who come to my site come via organic search.
Okay.
So that means people going to Google or other search engines, typing something in and finding content that links to my website.
Yeah.
So that means that is a very important source of new eyeballs for my business, if you like.
Yeah, these are people who didn't already know you and suddenly now they're finding you.
Yeah, versus it's about 18% from social media in total.
Okay.
So social media is important. I wouldn't want to get rid of a fifth of my traffic, for example. But it's 3 times less important than the content that helps me get found on Google. I
mean, this is one of the things that it's great about kind of following you on the blog and on the social media and stuff, because you're always learning and sharing what you've learned. Yeah. So how do you go about, I mean, not just the social media stuff, but how do you go about learning to run your business better? Do you actively go out and research websites, or do you read books, or is it talking to people, or do you just make mistakes and learn from them?
Well, probably a bit of all of that. But I mean, the main thing for me, I think, certainly in the last 18 months to really drive me forward has been joining a couple of the well-known marketing communities in the UK. So that's the Content Marketing Academy and Atomic. And those two, they focus on content marketing, but a lot of it is solopreneurs, if you want, individual business owners who want to earn more money, market themselves better, learn what's going on in the field. And so there's it's a really good kind of collegiate atmosphere going on there. When you're surrounded by those people who also want to get better, they also want to know, how do I run a shop through my website, or how do I create an ebook that people actually want to download and read, or how do I position my pricing so that people take the more expensive option rather than the cheaper one. These are common things. It doesn't matter what business you're in, but everyone wants to know how to do those things if you run an online business. And so being around those people and having that kind of that content to consume, that has been the main way that I've helped my business to improve in the last 18 months or so.
And when I just say, joining those communities, you mentioned one of the things that there is kind of accountability groups. One of the things I always find, whether you're running a business where you're employing people or you're kind of by yourself, and I've done both, it's having people to whom you are accountable, or at least who are going to ask you some questions, is kind of really important. I mean, for me, obviously, at the moment, I have a board and shareholders, which kind of is a thing. But I mean, but you need people outside of that as well. I mean, is that where you find that kind of conversation in those groups?
Yeah, I'm a member of one small accountability group of only 5 people, but it's good. You keep yourself in check. It's kind of like, it's almost like working to a deadline. I'm terrible without deadlines. So if I just thought, for example, I'm going to make an ebook that shows people why they need to hire a technical writer, for example. Well, without a deadline, that's just not going to happen. It'll be at the bottom of page 2 of my list. Yeah. But if I make that promise out loud, if I do it to an accountability group, for example, I know that it's going to get done because
they're going to come back and go, well, have you done that yet?
Yeah.
You said you were going to do this.
What's the status on this?
Yeah.
So it's a very simple concept. So long as you have the right mix of personalities, and to keep it small, the last thing you want is try to be accountable to 50 people. Yeah. That's not workable. And you don't need to be part of some paid structure to do that. You can just have that idea and contact some people and do it via email and Skype and Zoom and whatever.
Absolutely. So when, as you say, you're thinking about how you do stuff. When you think about kind of your business, when you think about the next 5 years or the next 15 years or whatever, how do you go about planning that? And obviously, you'll have your plans and that's what they are. That's fine. But how do you do that? I mean, do you have a very rigid set of goals, or do you just wing it, or how do you fit into that spectrum of planning?
I don't try to plan too rigidly, to be honest. I probably ought to, but I don't. But I know from looking at my stats, I know that the more content I create and share, the bigger my sphere of influence becomes, and the more people I attract in terms of potential customers and things like subscribers to my mailing list, for example. So I know that that's the path for me.
How do you balance that? I mean, the difficulty with content marketing is you have to spend time writing it and researching to come up with the ideas for it. Yeah. And obviously that's time you're not spending actually earning money. How do you balance those two things?
Yeah, I mean, I started when I decided that I was going to commit to content marketing. I thought that I would do an 80-20 split of 80% client work and 20% marketing work.
So I don't a day a week kind of thing. Yeah.
I mean, I don't keep accurate tabs on whether it really breaks down, because some weeks it'll be a case where I've got a couple of blogs that I really want to get out, and I've got a podcast interview, for example, this one. But then other weeks I might be focused on a project that really keeps me occupied. So it's hard to understand where it breaks down. But roughly speaking, I try to go for an 80-20 split. And yes, that means a day of the week, if you work a 5-day working week, is going to be spent on things like content creation and general marketing. Yeah. And for a lot of people, if you look at it that way, that seems like an awful lot.
Yeah, it can sound like that's just ridiculous,
Yes.
10 minutes at the end of the week kind of thing. But no, you've got to...
Yeah, I think it needs a bit more than that if you want to build that personal brand. Because another thing to remember is that if you build up enough of a content bank, if you like, then maybe in 3, 4, 5 years, it's a long-term way of thinking, that content is still going to be working for you. It's still going to be found on Google. People are still going to be reading it and possibly contacting you for your services or to buy a product or whatever. So it's a long-term investment.
Yeah.
I know some people who have been doing this longer than I have, sort of 8 to 10 years in terms of consistent content creation, and they've started to significantly slow down the rate of their content creation, because they've built up such a huge bank of info that's out there that now ranks well on Google and has been there for a while, and
it just works for them all the time.
It's there 24 hours a day. It doesn't matter if you're on holiday, it doesn't matter if you're ill, it's still kind of out there being found. And so I think that's just the best long-term approach. Yeah. And I know from looking at my own stats that, my projection for this year is to have doubled my traffic from last year. And last year itself was by far my greatest year. Yeah. And yet I'm still creating content at roughly the same rate. So it's not as though I've doubled my output. Yeah. It's just that I'm adding.
It's a accretive kind of
thing.
Yeah.
It's a cumulative effect. So for me, that's my plan. It's no more well formed than that, really. But it's something I do enjoy doing, and so why not continue?
Absolutely. So when you've been doing the writing for a while, if sort of having sort of got out from the kind of the corporate overlords, what have you learned about yourself from running a business for that kind of time? Do you think of yourself in the same way you did those years ago?
Yeah, I didn't really think of myself as an individual back then, which is probably not good. I think I would say the things I've learned are that I definitely need deadlines. Okay. Open-ended deadlines just don't work for me at all. So that's really important. I don't miss office politics, so I'm quite happy to keep my own counsel. And also, I'm just naturally inclined to work harder when I'm working for my own success rather than someone else's. So I always did work hard when I was in the office, but when you're the person in the hot seat,
Yeah.
You're willing to do more
There's a
because
difference in motivation there, isn't there?
Yeah, you're setting yourself up for future success. And I don't know how things are going to play out, but maybe I'll have a business that I hand over to my daughter one day. I don't know, but it's something I'm building for me, rather than building for a faceless organisation.
Yeah.
So I'd say those are probably the main things.
Yeah. So what is it that you find hardest about running a business? Is it the day to day? Is it looking after the finance or whatever? Or coming up with ideas for the content? What is it, and how do you kind of overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, coming up with content ideas actually has never been that much of a challenge for me. So I'm thankful, because I know some people do suffer with writer's block and that kind of thing. It's never been an issue for me. Whenever I get an idea, I'll just write it down. It's just even a skeleton, 3 bullet points, and I know that I can come back to that and re-engage from there, and it's not too hard. But issues that I have in my business, sometimes I don't know how busy I'm going to be, so it's hard to know how many clients to take on. I know some copywriters work with sort of 8 clients at once. I just could not do that. So I deal with that by saying that I won't work with more than 3 clients at once, and usually it's 2. But that's one of the issues. Another one is just selling the value of the service, because unless you're illiterate, everyone can write. So you might be naturally inclined to think, well, let's say we've got a website, we need to put some words on that website. We've got a keyboard and we can write, so we'll write. Whereas a writer, obviously, a professional who's schooled at doing these things will be able to give you a better result. 9 times out of 10. But selling that value can be difficult. And also, of course, I work for myself, so you don't have direct contact with people a lot of the time. There isn't the same office environment. But then things like the marketing communities that we talked about and social media can alleviate that sense of being isolated a little bit. And what else? Well, I suppose the fact that I haven't actually got a proper specialism. Even though I started out saying I'm going to be an a writer for IT, because that's what I know. But my first tranche of customers didn't want that. They wanted other things, and of course I had to take on those jobs. And in the end, I ended up doing so many different bits and pieces that I couldn't very well call myself a specialist in IT, and so it's played out for the last 10 years.
So we talked about kind of what's hard, but what is it that keeps you coming back every day, sitting down, doing the work, running the business?
I just enjoy the process of writing and the process of explaining how things work, so cutting out the fat, getting straight to the point, and just giving people those aha moments. Not to sound too Alan Partridge about it, but do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
When they've read something and it doesn't make any sense, and then they've read something that you've written and they go, "Oh, right, I got it, I understand." That's a brilliant feeling. That's because that's memorable for them, and it gives them a gateway to more knowledge. It's a good feeling to kind of pass on. So it's not hey, I'm not a heart surgeon, but it's a nice feeling to pass on, and it's something I like doing. The motivation's not an issue for me. It's just something I would do if I wasn't paid to do it.
But don't tell your clients. Shh. Excellent. Well, thanks very much for your time, John. That's been a fascinating conversation.
Very welcome. Cheers.
I want to thank John again for that great conversation. I love that idea from Ann Handley's book that nobody ever complained that something was too simple to understand. And that's clearly something that John has really put into practice in the way that he works, the way he runs his business, the way he writes on the web and stuff. And also that idea that you can be your own Google, that you can be the person who provides the best answers to people's real questions in whatever space that you are in. And that's something that I think we can all put into practice. But we all have our own space and there are things that we are expert in. So that's, I think, great bit of advice. So thanks very much to John for that. Next week, I'm talking to Saima Aslam, who's the director of the Bradford Literature Festival. So quite a different take on the publishing business, a different take on the kind of business it is. So come back next Tuesday to hear me talk to Saima. And until then, have a great week. This was Talking Through My Hat, a podcast by John Pettigrew, founder of We Are Future Proofs. If Please let me know your thoughts by leaving a review at Apple Podcasts or by commenting on the website myhat.wearefutureproofs.com. You can subscribe to this channel at Apple Podcasts, Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Our theme music is from hooksounds.com.